The learning never stops. I feel like the minute the learning stops, that means that you have become complacent with who you are. I'm like a student of life and I know nothing. Like I think the humility with which you enter a project or a part is how much you can absorb and learn and bring to it. In a hypothetical parallel reality, if all of the characters that I play come and sit in a room, then none of them should be able to speak to each other because they're so different from each other. Hi guys, this is Tahir Raj Bhasin on the Humans of Cinema podcast. Like, share and subscribe.
Tahir, thank you so much for joining. It's such a pleasure. I am such an admirer of your work. It's so interesting, and I'm so happy that you were interested in our work and you wanted to explore something, because I myself, whenever I have thought about the guests that I really wanted to have on the page for the podcast, you all were always on my mind. I was like, but wohi, matlab, abhi, it's only the recent past that I've really started kind of taking this forward and shooting episodes, but eventually I had to do it. But it's like a cosmic intervention.
I thank you. Thanks, Harshit. Thank you for having me. I've been an admirer of your content, and I think anything that helps get cinema-driven content out there is just a joy to be a part of. So thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much. And it really reflects in the kind of choices that you make and in the kind of work that you do. And again, it's unfortunately still such a rarity to see in our industry and in our cinema for actors to be making those kinds of choices. And I would really, I'm really keen to know more about your journey. I would love to know, like, were you always a filmy kid? Were you always interested in films since a young age?
Filmy kid in Bombay means something very different. It means that you were born in a film family. So no, I'm not a filmy kid in that sense. But I grew up on films. Like my dad used to be with the Indian Air Force, and so I have grown up in Gwalior, in Madhya Pradesh, in Allahabad, in now Prayagraj, in UP. So I was saying, yes, I'm a filmy kid because I grew up on films. Like my dad used to be with the Indian Air Force, and so I grew up in these small Air Force stations which were all over the country. Gwalior in Madhya Pradesh, I was in Allahabad in UP, Jamnagar in Gujarat, and in sub mein, and I'm a 90s kid, single screen theatres used to be big. So it used to be an event ki every Friday or every alternate Friday we would go and watch whatever came out, and through those single screens you saw what happens in the rest of the world. It was like your window to the world, so to speak. So
were you watching like Hollywood films also? Because Air Force वगैरह में तो वो भी होती है ना, screenings भी अलग से होती हैं शायद.
Screenings भी होती हैं, open air theatre. I would say when I moved to Delhi is when Hollywood and international films started to happen. But otherwise I've grown up on Jo Jeeta, Wohi, Sikander and Bazigar and Kabhi Haan Kabhi Na and every David Dhawan film possible. And I think if you're an Indian kid, especially if you're a 90s Indian kid, this is before satellite television came in a big way, and before HBO and Star movies became a thing of our lives. I don't know if people today know what that transition from this thing, but it was all like you grew up on your dose of hardcore Bollywood.
Yeah, was Jo Jeeta, Wohi, Sikander an influential film for you?
Very funny that you bring that film up in particular, because it is the first film that I saw in a theatre.
Really?
And I was visiting my aunt in Bombay. We had come on one of our summer holidays, and she said, we're going to take you to a movie theatre. And I had no idea what that was. And they just told me कि जो आप TV में film देखते हो, वही चीज़ आपको बड़ी दिखाई देगी. तो मेरे मन में था कि एक TV होगा, वो बड़ा होगा. But when I remember walking in, it was a single screen theatre in Bombay, and Jo Jeeta Sikander started off, and it was just like you're sold. It was like a typical filmy scene. If I had to picturize this in a frame, it's like you can only see the projector light on this 7-year-old's face, and he is mesmerized, and that's what it was. And it was what a film, because
so you remember that moment?
I remember that moment. I remember being in the theatre cheering when that end cycle race is happening, and I can't remember the names of the colleges now.
Modern, एक तो पक्का modern college था.
Modern.
जो मीरो वाला था शायद.
मीरो वाला उन्होंने black पहन रखा था, and the other one was red. But just that moment is something that still gives me goosebumps of how much I felt. I think my mind at that stage, and even today when I think about it, they call it suspension of disbelief, right? When you stop that thing of applying logic, of believing that this is fiction and you're sitting in reality. And that's what happened. I was in that audience cheering for those guys in that bike race.
Is that kind of, did your aspiration of being on the big screen yourself, did it start there, do you think?
You know, if this was a regular interview, it would be very romantic to say that yes, it started
It
at
was
that
in that
time.
moment.
बस वहीं पर उसी मोमेंट में मैंने डिसाइड किया था और मैंने अपने आप को स्क्रीन पर वहीं देखा था. पर हकीकत में ऐसा होता नहीं है. आई थिंक इट्स अ वेरी सबकॉन्शियस प्रोसेस एंड इट इज.
पर ये तो है कि एक बार फिल्मों से प्यार शुरू हो गया तो शायद कहीं ना कहीं वही चीज़ आगे जाके तुम्हें इट कन्वर्ट्स इनटू दैट एस्पिरेशन, राइट?
बिल्कुल. पर एक लव एट फर्स्ट साइट होता है और फिर एक ठहराव वाला धीरे धीरे करके प्यार होता है. एंड आई थिंक मेरा वो धीरे धीरे करके था क्योंकि छुप छुप के प्यार था एक्चुअली. बिकॉज coming from a defense family where no one had ventured into it, just overnight it wasn't even a possibility in your mind.
Correct.
And it came much later once I moved to Delhi and I moved to Delhi University and started acting and went to my first acting workshop, that I was like, wow, there are so many technicalities that actually go into what looks so easy on screen.
And how did that मतलब आपका वो मन कैसे किया कि मैं एक्टिंग वर्कशॉप्स लूँ? मतलब were you also acting in school? Were you doing school plays or?
I was doing a lot of extracurricular in school because I moved schools a lot, so there was constantly debate competitions and dance competitions and there was poetry and everything that kids do in school.
Yeah.
And I remember really enjoying it. I know this sounds like a real actor cliche to say, but I was someone who was always more comfortable on a stage than I was off it.
Yeah.
Like you put me one-on-one in conversation with someone, I'd probably be the awkward person, but when you put me on stage, there's
Got
just this transformation switch that happened, and that's something that I realized in school, to say that performance makes me happy. It is something where I can be my truest self, and that was the thought that took me into we should explore this more.
Wow, okay. And you started doing acting workshops outside of college.
I did, yeah.
With whom?
There still is an acting coach called Barry John.
Of course, yeah.
And he's now moved to Bombay, but he used to be in Delhi. And when I joined college, I had an aunt of mine who said that if you really want to act, you should do this acting workshop. And I remember even now the fees this we're talking about, like early 2000s, was like 15,000 for a month. And it was quite a bit. And
मतलब कोर्स ही हो गया पूरा.
कोर्स ही हो गया. Like you could have, and you know, all my other friends were either doing MBA coaching classes or computer classes या extra curricular करना है तो गिटार सीख लो. This acting this thing was not something that a lot of people were doing, and to me it just sounded something that had been so close to my heart and so right. And I realized within 3 days of going to that workshop that I am where I belong.
Wow. How did that influence you, like that journey of being at Barry John? What are some learnings that you had there that you still carry with you?
The learnings that I carry is a lot of people on the outside think that it's all fun and games, but they don't realize, like, when you're in a serious theater environment, yes, you're playing, it is a play, but there is a discipline behind it, and there is a craft that goes into it, and everything from your posture to your breath to your thinking to how you're looking at a script, everything are these intricate details that you look into, calculate, and then you make it look like it's uncalculated, and that to me was beautiful.
Tell me something. So because I've never been to an acting school, so I'm not aware of this, but ये जो कुछ actors का होता है ना कि some actors are method actors because that's their process, while some work in a very different way. Is that something that जो आपका acting coach होता है, क्या वो उसकी जो ideology होती है या फिर जो उसका तरीका होता है उसके हिसाब से define किया जाता है, या फिर वो आपके ऊपर छोड़ते हैं कि यू डिस्कवर योर प्रोसेस? यार
मुझे पर्सनली लगता है मेथड एक्टिंग एक बहुत अब्यूज टर्म है, क्योंकि क्या मेथड है, किसका मेथड है, नो वन रियली डिफाइंस व्हाट इट इज. आई डोंट सी माई सेल्फ एज अ मेथड एक्टर बिकॉज एवरी पार्ट टू मी requires a different approach and requires a different method. Probably 60% of the process would remain the same, but otherwise you go by instinct, and that to me is the most beautiful thing. But it's like there's no one correct route that I can say that this what works for me might not work for you, might work for another actor. So there's never ever like one correct way of going about it. But to an extent, yes, your acting institute that you go to gives you a foundation on what you base the rest of your journey on.
And it's after that it's a process of discovering yourself.
Yeah, because whether you move to Bombay or I'm very sure that they have these in Delhi as well, you don't have to go to an acting school, quote unquote, where you're in it for 3 years. You can do a shorter workshop which lasts for 6 months. Some people even do 10-day workshops, and I'm not saying that you'll overnight become the best version of an actor that you can be, but there'll be something. उन 10 दिन में आप कुछ ऐसा सीख लेंगे जो आपने कभी जाकर अप्लाई किया, which is going to uplift what your performance becomes.
और ये जो आर्टिस्ट के बारे में बोला जाता है कि जैसे this was such an influential thing for me because which is why I always remember it. पर बंदिश बैंडिट्स के टाइम पे I was speaking to आनंद तिवारी sir and he told me कि उनको आइडिया आया बंदिश बैंडिट्स बनाने का क्योंकि उनके किसी फ्रेंड के फादर थे जो कि बहुत एक जाने माने प्लेबैक सिंगर हैं एंड ही one day after like 40 years of doing what he was doing suddenly one day came up to him and told him कि आज एक वो राग है जो कि आज मैंने समझा कि वो राग है क्या, even though he's like a playback singer and has probably done a lot of classical training. Do you feel that, you know, like as an artist, your learning never stops and like where does the learning stop eventually? Do you ever think about that? And आपके साथ क्या होता है मतलब whenever like you're still doing films, do you feel like you're learning every time you're doing a new film, you're learning something new about your craft?
I'm just smiling because that's a great question. The learning never stops. I feel like the minute the learning stops, that means that you have become complacent with who you are, and I like to live by, I'm like a student of life and I know nothing. Like I think the humility with which you enter a project or a part is how much you can absorb and learn and bring to it. Of course, you've got the script and the lines, whether you're doing a play or you're doing a film. But inspiration can come from anywhere. It can come from you can be listening to a great song. A lot of actors I know, I have a separate playlist for every character that I play. But it's not only music. You could see a great art exhibition and something could inspire you from that. You could go on a holiday. It would be something that your friend said, and you hold on to that one thing, and that's where you get the inspiration from. And the minute you have like that thing of like you're just a sponge and you want to soak everything in, and you don't know where that germ is going to come from, is what's beautiful about it. And your question reminds me of this. I was watching this Al Pacino interview, and he said that I was performing Richard III on Broadway, and he said that I had done 80 performances of the play, and on my 81st performance, so there was some large number like that, I finally found the character. And I said, for Al Pacino to be saying that for 81st, and the interviewer asked him, I might get the number wrong, but he says not on the 80th, not on the 82nd, on the 81st. And he said yes, and he said that's why repetition is beautiful. And for me that's like an amazing insight, because that's what rehearsal does, right? You rehearse it to get the mechanics of what is the normal out of the way. First you learn the rules and then you break them, and I think that's what acting allows you to do.
And I think that's something that, especially in theatre, right? Matlab, you are doing the same performance over and over. Yeah. And while obviously on film, like that's the fundamental difference between the two, right? Yeah. And do you, as a performer, sometimes miss that? Are you still doing theatre, by the way?
I'm not still doing theatre. When you move to Bombay, I realized very quickly that when you're looking at film and you're looking at series now, not at the time when I moved,
right.
But it's a full-time job. Like you cannot, if you're part of it would be a disservice to a film project if you're in the middle of shooting a scene and you say I have to go because mera rehearsal hai, right. And the other way around, mera rehearsal chal raha hai, meko jana hai kyunki mera call time hai. So you're neither here nor there. So you have to make, for me, I had reached a point where I had to make a choice. So once I moved to Bombay, it wasn't about it. But to answer your question, there are moments even in a long format, like a series, Yeh Kaali Kaali Aankhein, which I shot for Netflix. Yeah. You shoot for 100 days, and very often you reach like maybe say day 12 and you feel like I found the character. Now that doesn't mean what you were doing 11 days was not true, but it's just that one thing. It's the way you pick up the cup and have the green tea, or it's the way you say, acha, theek hai. Like, you know, it's just in those nuances that sometimes you discover on the 12th day or the 13th day that you feel like, okay, I found my character now. Yeah.
But, you know, especially in theatre, I mean, I haven't done a lot of theatre myself, so college wala due theatre gaya, but even then, you know, it is, to an outsider, it might seem like bar same part karna might get exhausting after a point, but it doesn't, right?
No.
Matlab it's even more exciting every time, because every time you feel like अंदर से आता है कि तुम कैसे इसको नया कर सकते हो इस बार, to make it more exciting.
So I feel like it's like if you're lucky enough to get a great interesting part, revisiting that part every day is like meeting a good friend again and again. और बार आप अगर आप उससे दोस्ती कर लेते हैं तो मतलब एक हफ्ते बाद, दूसरे हफ्ते बाद वो दोस्ती बढ़ती जाती है.
Yeah, that's true.
which is also makes it hard when you're doing a smaller project like a film when that part ends. The reverse is true. ऐसा लगता है कि एक दोस्त या एक lover आपसे बिछड़ गया हो.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I wanted to speak to you about again because do you it was an extremely influential time of my life, and I was in the dramatic study of Samraj, and I know that you were doing dramatics in college as well. How influential was that period for you? Like just being in college, being surrounded by just the right people and being a part of the cultural societies in the college, how did that influence you?
Always just brings a smile to my face. College. एक तो एक बहुत बड़ा, अब जब मैं हाइंडसाइट में उसके बारे में सोचता हूँ तो एक बहुत बड़ा कल्चरल शॉक होता है कॉलेज, क्योंकि दिल्ली के स्कूल में हर बंदा अपने स्कूल में शेर होता है, एंड देन ऑल ऑफ अ सडन यू एंटर कॉलेज जब हर स्कूल का शेर आपके साथ आकर मिलता है और फिर पता लगता है कि आपकी असली में, आई डोंट नो वेदर वी कैन से दिस, बट असली में औकात क्या है. बिकॉज and if you're going to a North Campus Delhi University college, then even in terms of whether it's extracurricular or whether it's their marks, everyone is bringing their A game to the table. So that's a bit of a cultural shift that takes you a little time. But I think nothing breaks the ice better than extracurricular activities. The minute you're part of a society, and for me, it wasn't so much कि performance क्या थी और मतलब कुछ amazing मैंने characters play किए. मेरे लिए जो सीख मिली थी मेरे को DU के थिएटर से वो था with like-minded people. When you're in a bunch of creative people और आप बिट्स पिलानी जाते हो या बॉम्बे के मूड इंडिगो जाके हो फेस्टिवल, वो जो एक्सपीरियंस है वो मेरे ख्याल क्लासरूम के अंदर जो पढ़ाई होती है it's equal if not greater, and that is where you realize, or at least I did, that being around creative people, bringing ideas and stories to life is something that really interests me.
और collaboration भी ना, मतलब it also teaches you how to collaborate with other people.
Yeah. Collaborating, winning and losing in so many ways, in strange ways. I'm realizing it in this interview that it was Jeeta Sikander in real life, because it is college and competitions and those moments.
मेरे को एकदम से chills आ गए सोच के. But yeah, man, like going to Mood Indigo and being surrounded by like it's the best colleges in the country, right? So क्योंकि वहाँ पे भी वो लोग कितनी screening करके बुलाते हैं. And then there are वो अस्मिता के वो बैठे होते हैं, मतलब जो judge कर रहे होते हैं, right? That's how it generally is. And yeah, it teaches you so much. But do you have, because I'm sure that in college you must have been writing also, right?
Was I writing? No, not really. There were always, no. We picked up scripts that were already this thing, yeah.
But do you have any writing aspirations for yourself?
No, I would say a closet writer. Every now and then I just like doodle something that comes to my mind, or like the offhand script, but no, not like a...
Okay. And I just want to go back to just one thing that you're speaking about, single screen theatres. Single screen, आपको लगता है, मतलब do you feel like, do you have like a nostalgia about that, about the fact that the single screens have disappeared now, and that culture of watching films is kind of, although थोड़ा सा वो है भी, थोड़ा सा over वो है, थोड़ा conflicted, लेकिन फिर भी मतलब it is definitely changing a lot, right?
Definitely. I think with technology change is inevitable, and that's something that's happening at the moment. It's a mixed thing of looking at it from nostalgia. I miss the nostalgia of single screen theaters where you could buy a 10 rupee samosa and a 25 rupee popcorn and sit there. When I was growing up in Air Force stations, there were also open air theaters where चाहे बारिश भी हो रही हो तो लोग छाते के नीचे बैठ के एक फिल्म देख रहे होते थे. There's definitely a romance to that that I miss. But with the new wave of digital that has come, it's also afforded better writing, because storytelling is getting its due. Like we're realizing that to hold people's attention and to entertain them, you have to have engaging story, and stories are what holds the audience's attention.
Yeah, that's true. What kind of stories are you personally fascinated by?
Anything, honestly. I was talking to a friend yesterday and she was like, what are you watching? And I named 3 things and all 3 were of a different genre. And should I just tell you what So I told her Succession, which was on Geo Cinema now. Just amazing writing. It is a family drama but done with such finesse with every character, and for anyone watching this who hasn't seen it, I would definitely recommend it. There was something that's called Dave, which is about a Jewish white boy who wants to become a rapper, and it's his journey as an artist, and it is so meta on so many levels. It's just, and because he's also a co-writer, and I think he's also directed a few, or he's an executive producer on some of the episodes. It is so well done. It is so seamless. And then the third thing was, it's a crime docu series that I'm watching called Catching Criminals, which is which is amazing. Netflix. Yes. So it's whatever I'm feeling like at that point. There's no like one set genre.
And is that also the kind of stuff that, I mean, it also kind of reflects in your choices that you've been making. Like they're also so varied, right? Matlab, and yeah. So is that the kind of work that you also just feel excited about doing?
Yeah, we were talking about when does the learning stop? And for me, as an artist, अपने आप को engaged और interested रखने के लिए वो variation आपके choices ही ला सकती हैं. And it is my sort of dream that if in a hypothetical parallel reality, if all of the characters that I play come and sit in a room, then none of them should be able to speak to each other because they're so different from each other. You know, and even when I was growing up, although like I said, I've grown up on my dose of Bollywood. So influences to Shah Rukh Khan and Amitabh Bachchan rahe hain. But then once I started watching more international work, is when I was introduced to Al Pacino and Sean Penn and Marlon Brando, and that's where you realize that less is more. You know, holding on to. And then of course, as you continue watching stuff, I was just fascinated with Brad Pitt and Johnny Depp. And this is not for why everyone would say that, hey, I love Brad Pitt or Johnny Depp, not because of their amazing looking Hollywood superstars, but for the diversity of their choices, that they can do an ensemble film like an Ocean's 11 and still be secure enough to pull it off. They can do something as off-center as 12 Monkeys. I don't know if you've seen a Brad Pitt film called 12 Monkeys, and then you'll do 7, and it's Fight Club. It's the Benjamin Button, and it's like, these are characters that you're playing and you're bringing your stardom to them, and I like that's
an amazing way to put it.
Yeah, and so when people really ask me what is the kind of actor that you want to be, I want to be a star not for the sake of stardom, but because I want to lend that stardom to amazing stories, and that's for me like the power of what being a great actor is.
That's an amazing perspective, yeah. I'm tired like this. I genuinely feel, you know, like with actors like you now kind of getting the right opportunities, I really feel that is how things are going to change. And I personally feel that a lot of things do need to change, especially with respect to the kind of content that's being made. Again, I fell in love with cinema because of those exact films that I'm talking about. But at the same time, you know, वो वाला जो era था ना, वो चक दे स्वदेश और ये सब फिल्में जो बन रही थी, I just feel like that needs to come back.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about films like fashion is that everything is always cyclical. You know, there are always phases. And the beautiful thing, and I'm getting slightly philosophical here, but depending on what age or stage you are, you will romanticize a different section of the past. Does that make sense? Like, so for someone who's maybe 10 years, and this was an amazing thing that, again, I heard this in a Tarantino interview. He says that we now have a generation that has grown up on Marvel and DC films, and that for them is cinema. Like they won't relate to, like you show them a Scarface and they won't know how, like they won't be able to sit through a 2 hour 45 minute film. So we all romanticize different sections of our past based on where we are in our timeline.
That's a really good point. The way that I look at it is that I feel like it needs to be bifurcated into two different maybe forms of entertainment. Like, you know, both are movies, both are cinema, but maybe we just need to start looking at them differently. Both are important in their own way. The Marvel and the DCs are also important. Of course, because they are also, you know, such great experiences at the theatre. But and that is, I'm assuming that is the kind of direction that you would also like to go into.
If I've got you right, what you're trying to say is that like films should be like bracketed into whether they're trying to be commercial or whether they're trying to be art. And I'll tell you from an artist's point of view, and this is again like a growth that I've had. I know that what I need to do is to bring my 100% to the part that I'm in. Whether it is, I did a film called Chichore with Nitesh Tiwari, and that was like a big blockbuster commercial film. And I brought as much heart and soul to Derek as I would have for Manto or Yeh Kaali Kaali Aankhein on Netflix. And if I was to look at, like I named Shah Rukh Khan and Amitabh Bachchan, and you've named Swadesh and Chak De, and like a Shah Rukh Khan, you will believe in his character when you watch a Chak De, and you will believe him in Pathan, and that's very true. For you is like acting. And on another actor who I really admired was Irrfan Khan. I thought that like less is more is something that he really stood for. And my one beef that I have is that I never had an opportunity to work with him. Yeah.
What is your favorite Irfan Khan performance?
I would say Pan Singh Tomar.
Oh,
Yeah, I just thought it was really well done, and Hasil, of course, was special, which was his first, his breakout film, and the common answer would be Lunchbox. Like everyone, like really loves that. Yeah.
I also love his small cameo in Heather.
What an entry!
Such a small
What an
part,
entry!
what an entry.
Yeah. That is the dream, to have like music like that playing on your entry. It was just a guitar riff of To Ahona. Yeah.
I was talking to Pankaj Kumar, who shot Heather, and he told me something so interesting that shot was never going to be in the film. Irfan sir was doing it as a friendship वाली चीज़ थी विशाल सर के साथ, तो फिर इसलिए कर रहे थे. But then he came on set. That was the first shot that he did. उसके बाद जो उन्होंने देखी एंट्री, उन्होंने बोला यार मैं तो तेरे लिए ऐसे ही कर रहा था, अगर तू मेरे को बताता कि तू मेरे को ऐसी एंट्री देने वाला है, फिर तो मैं तेरे को बोलता कि मेरे को और थोड़ा सा पार्ट दे. You know. And it just happened, like it was coincidental, but it is so.
It's a magical film, like Heather for me. It was like, amazing. Yeah.
Is that like one of those films that you wish that you could have been a part of something like that?
Heather, for sure, undoubtedly. Heather, Urta Punjab would be another one. That genre of film where it's authorship. It's like where you can see the director's handwriting all over the film, and that is the dream, to try and do more stuff like that.
Just in general, like what is like a great acting moment for you on screen?
Would you like, in terms of something that I would watch and say is a great acting moment, or my personal thing that this thing? Okay, an incredible acting moment, and I revisit this every time. मुझे लगता है कि यार मेरे को आज थोड़ी acting, just like I haven't seen great acting in like 2 or 3 days. I'll watch Al Pacino and Robert De Niro sitting in a cafe in a scene in Heat, and they have and it's like there's no over dramatizing any of it. It's just pure dialogues, and it's all mostly in close shot. And the crazy thing when I watched some of the behind the scenes interviews is that they didn't rehearse, and they did it in about 10 takes, which is incredible for the length of what that scene was. And just I would give anything to be on the set when that moment was being shot.
Yeah. And your own, what is your favorite?
I just assumed when you said favorite acting moment that my own this thing, but अभी थोड़ा बुरा लग रहा है Al Pacino और Robert De Niro की बात करने के बाद फिर अपनी बात करो. But to answer your question, for me it's not always about the performance that an actor gave in the moment. So much of it is about a circumstance that you had to overcome in behind the scenes that the audience knows nothing about in order to give that performance. So this is 2021, and 2 projects I was shooting parallelly. Loop Lapeta opposite Taapsee, and there was Yeh Kaali Kaali Aankhein for Netflix. The scheduling was such that I had to do a scene for Yeh Kaali Kaali Aankhein in which I hear that Shweta Tripathi is in trouble, the girl who I'm in love with, and that was meant to be a day shoot ending. And ending at about 5 o'clock, and we were shooting in Virar, which is about 3 hours from Bombay. Loop Lapeta had to shoot a night scene on the terrace where I'm meeting Savi, which is played by Taapsee. The Loop Lapeta, the Yeh Kaali Kaali Aankhein shoot that I was doing, something I ate on set that day. This sounds very random when I'm saying it in an interview, but this is what goes on set. Gave me really bad food poisoning. And it is the worst. Like every actor will tell you, to have a physical ailment of any kind, whether you get a sprained ankle or you get you get food poisoning, is the worst thing for an actor, because then your mind is on that. And to go from that scene of a very emotional scene of realizing Shikha is in trouble in Yeh Kaali Kaali Aankhein, packing up at 6 o'clock, doing a 3-hour drive, and 10 o'clock showing up on Loop Lapeta set to shoot the opening scene for Loop Lapeta, being under a physical distress, but managing to pull both of them off for me was like quite a challenge.
You revisit those moments.
Yeah, it's still it actually makes it gives you faith that hey, if you can overcome stuff like this. And you hear about it all the time in sport. It was one of the most amazing things that attracted me towards Sunil Gavaskar's character, because I read his autobiography before doing 83 Sunny Days, and I think he fractured or broke one of his fingers just before one of a really important in the early years when he was playing, but he went on to play anyway. And for me, like that's when you know that you're committed to what it is that you're doing. Just recently saw Sachin Tendulkar interview where he was on a one of the first Pakistan test tours when a ball hit him and it hit his nose and he had to bandage his nose, and he was 16 or 17 and still went onto the pitch and continued to play. I think it's not, when you're a professional actor, that is what defines being a professional versus someone who is, thinks of it as a hobby, is when you can be on 4 hours of sleep, pulling back-to-back night shifts, have a physical ailment, but still show up with 100%. That's when you know you're in love with what you're doing.
I thought Sunil Gavaskar's character in 83 was so interesting because he was going through such a big personal crisis in terms of professional crisis, actually, in terms of, because he was kind of going through a slump at such an important juncture, right? So for that part, did you have to really get into the depths of Sunil Gavaskar's life in general, or did you just focus on that one time of his life?
See, again, that's where method comes in, because there is no method, so to speak. It was a completely different approach because there was so much. First of all, you start getting calls from everyone, from every generation in your family. Yaar, tu Sunil Gavaskar kar payega? Because I'm not a cricketer. I'm not a professional. I had to be taught how to hold the bat and stand like Sunil Gavaskar. So right from that pressure of getting the physicality right to getting into the headspace. So yes, I had to read the autobiography to get to someone's that point in their life. You had to know where they come from. Like, for example, if I had to play Amitabh Bachchan today, it would be very difficult to do unless I went back to the when he started off to when his I mean, I still believe he's in his glory days, but I would have to go back to Diwar and Sholay and go and see interviews of that to understand what makes the man. And it was exactly the same approach with Gavaskar.
How was just the experience of, I mean, now that the film has now become this blockbuster, and obviously it went through this journey of just not being able to find a release because of COVID and all of that. How was that whole time period for you? Were you anxious about the film release? Ki kab hogi?
I knew that the makers were very sure that it would release at the right time. So when on a film of that scale, you know that you're in the right hands. And luckily, as an actor, none of those commercial decisions are things that you have to worry about. But my real takeaway from that film was the experience of making it. We actually all moved to the UK for 3 months. If a scene had to be shot at the Lords or at the Oval, we were actually there shooting it. And if a film like that had to be made, it had to be made at that scale and at that time. And it was like when I saw it on paper and when Kabir sir met me and spoke about it, I knew that ye once in a lifetime kind of project and you just have to do it.
Yeah, Kabir sir के साथ ये वाली बात करना भूल गए, लेकिन I would, because Kabir sir also interviewed literally 2-3 days ago. Okay. It's such an amazing chat and he's so sweet. But I would love to know, yaar, because that film has those moments where it has been recreated exactly the way that it happened. How, just to watch that is so surreal to see. कि ये हुआ कैसे होगा? How many times do you have to just keep watching that scene again and again?
That's right. So a lot of people were like, but you're not a sportsman. How will you play Gavaskar? And the difference between sport in film and sport in real life is that it's really looked at like sports choreography, especially when you're recreating something like cricket where everyone in the country has an opinion on it. You know that वो split screen करके लोग compare करने वाले हैं. So you have to choreograph moments. Like if a shot was played in a particular way, you have to choreograph and play it repetition, just like that over and over to make sure that you get it right. And what was amazing was because Kabir sir comes with a background in documentary filmmaking, is that totally helped. So those like freeze shots that you see of like black and white footage was like all him, and it was something that surprised all of us because we knew that we were recreating moments. We had no idea that it was going to be given like that docu-feature kind of treatment, and it was surreal because I remember getting goosebumps. I'd practiced walking like Sunil Gavaskar. He had like this very particular swag when he used to walk out of onto the pitch. And there's a moment towards the climax where they have a real black and white grainy shot of him walking out, and they've cut to me walking in the film, and it's just crazy. Like it gives you goosebumps.
Yeah, it was really masterful work. I don't think anyone else would have been able to get it that right.
And that climax that's been created of like bringing the country together, it was phenomenal.
Are you comfortable with revisiting your films and watching yourself on screen? Like a lot of people are uncomfortable.
Very interesting question. No, I'm not really, not unless I really have to. So I love to be in a cast and crew screening in the week that it's released. I love to watch it with friends and family to get their opinion, but I'm not someone who will go back to it. A, because it's not something that I like doing. Second, I'm over analytical, so I'll always think I could have done that differently, I could have done that better. And so it's best if I stay away from it. Possibly the first time that I'll be doing it, because I'll need to, is we're going into shoot Yeh Kaali Kaali Aankhein season 2 very soon. So it'll be important to just revisit to see what happened where. And
Dub karte ho to dekhna hi padta hai lekin.
yeah, but then again you're also performing, right? Dub is almost like you're acting again, but in a closed this thing. So that's almost like you're giving another take, but performing through the voice at that point.
Okay, I have one more question that it's similar to this, but it's okay if you don't want to answer this. But one part of it is obviously you being analytical about how you performed. But how about how you look? Does that sometimes bother you? Because for some people it's also that. For example, Adam Driver has spoken about this. He does not watch a single thing that he's done.
Right.
Because for him it's more about the way that he's looking. And that happens with a lot of people, right? We watch ourselves on camera and we're like, this is not me, this is not how I look. Because camera also alters a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
So is that also something that sometimes bothers you?
If I have apprehension or reservations on things that are going on, and I remember this happened to me once because in Chichore, the older character that I play is bald. So I had to wear a prosthetic bald cap. And of course, that's where you have to let go of the ego, because like there is this part of you to say that, am I going to look okay? Are people going to like this? And that's the beautiful thing about acting, right? It teaches you so much about yourself, about your vulnerabilities, your insecurities. And you have to at some point trust in what the director is doing. But I did have a moment when I was like, am I going to enjoy this? But then when I saw the contrast between how the young and the old came together.
So आप young में तो बिल्कुल ही stud थे.
Yeah, तो वो stud फिर बाद में उसका क्या होता है? Then it's what made it interesting. It was that sort of juxtaposition.
वो तो important भी था ना film के लिए. Everyone gets shocked when they see you.
when they so it was that shock value. But is it very important to me when I'm watching myself about how I'm looking? No, that process would probably happen during the look test when we're fine-tuning things. But I've been very fortunate to have some amazing directors who I can just like hand over to. And that's the beautiful thing. You have to let go of that aspect of your ego. To say, अच्छा मैं photo shoot में लग सकता हूँ, ये character should look amazing.
Do you think that the director जो चीज़ बोली जाती है ना, डायरेक्टर ने एक्टिंग अच्छी निकाली है, do you believe in that? Do you feel like a director is responsible for how an actor eventually ends up performing?
These are tricky questions. Like I have to put my politically correct this thing
but
on.
Why?
But I'll give you the most honest answer that I possibly can. I believe it is collaborative. And the best directors who I've enjoyed working with are people who get into intricate details during prep, during rehearsal. They will tell you, aise karo, waise karo. But when you're on set and shooting, they will give you your space. And it's different for every actor, so I can't speak for everyone. But for me, when a director gives you space, it is a sign of trust. And when that trust happens, it's when you are motivated to give 100 and
feel more comfortable.
You feel comfortable, yeah. And directors who are amazing to work with are people who you can go to with 5 ideas. He might reject 4 of them, but there is that freedom to say that, hey, ऐसा करें. He'll be like, नहीं, ऐसा नहीं, ऐसा करते हैं. पर वो एक conversation का एक freedom होना चाहिए, which is what makes it beautiful. Takes you back to your Delhi University theatre days when things used to be all about collaboration. Yeah.
Okay, I think on a final note, I think this is the one question that I always end with, and I'm just always, and it's slightly loaded compared to the rest of the conversation.
It's going to be more loaded. All your questions.
This wasn't loaded at all.
Right.
This is loaded in a different way.
Okay.
Like, what is happiness for you? How do you define happiness?
Oh shit, we're going there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If that's the question, what is happiness?
It is loaded, right?
It's very loaded. And I'm now wondering whether you're going to keep this long pause of.
It is. This also kind of adds layers to how you view happiness.
Yeah, it's so strange, but I feel, and this is going to make me sound old, but I feel like first of all, happiness you realize very quickly is a transient concept. If that makes sense, like what you think of as happiness, the minute you set a goal, when you reach that goal, you're very quickly. You shift that goalpost, and I'll give you a very simple example. When I came to Bombay, it was my dream at that point. that I will come and I will sign either a Dharma or a Yash Raj film. I signed a YRF film in Mardani and was very fortunate because they signed me on. But the minute that happened and that had achieved, like it moved to the next thing and the next thing. And that's, I think, the way the human mind is wired. It is how survival happened, is never to be content. So what I look for instead of happiness is fulfillment. And in that moment, what is fulfilling me? And fulfillment to me could be a great project. It could be breakfast with a friend. It could be traveling to a destination that I've never been to before. It's being present and being in that moment, trying to be fulfilled. And that's what I chase.
On that moment of fulfillment, I think this was such an insightful chat for me as well, and yeah, just so much to kind of think about and so much to kind of also learn from you. Okay, there one more question that I completely missed, but I would love to know from you, what has been the role of cinema in your life?
Again, it's something that has changed as you age. When you were a kid, like Jo Jeeta Sikander happened, you enter into like a dark room and you get transported into this parallel world of stories. Have you seen Fabelmans?
Yes.
It's just such an amazing film. That for me encapsulates like the power of what like storytelling can do and what an influence it can have. In your teenage years, I realized that it's almost therapeutic. Like you can come out of a movie theater or after watching a film feeling like it's given you a new philosophy. Like films for me that did that was, there was a film that ironically Sean Penn directed called Into the Wild.
Oh, yeah,
I don't know if you, so there was Into the Wild, then there was Fight Club, and there was just, there were films that had this subtext of philosophies in them, of like rebellion, and that was so influential. And if I had to give a parallel in Bollywood that was going on around the same time, there was Rock On, or there was Rang De Basanti, where there was like, live your own truth being the theme that runs through them. And then later, when I started to study film, I studied film and media. I went to the University of Melbourne and I started to read about the history and the philosophy of film and what goes into script writing. You realize, wow, there is so much that goes into the making of a film, which is that you consume as entertainment. And it's funny because in our country, there are two things. There's cricket and there are films. Everyone has an opinion on it and everyone loves it. And it looks easy when you're watching it, but like it's only the people who are involved who know how much a part of your soul goes into into both of those things. And then when you start working in film, I love to give you an analogy, I like to look at it as a massive plain canvas, and every department, like the scriptwriter gets one stroke, the DOP gets one stroke of paint, the actor gets one stroke, the set designer gets another, and it's the director who's got like this broader vision. But it's collaborative in that way, like you're making this incredible piece of art which is collaborative of light and technology and set design and costume, and all of it comes together to tell you a story. And that for me is beautiful. And to look at it, if I was to look at it philosophically, an average film crew is about 150, 200, 250 people. Those same people in that exact combination will never come together again. The probability of every person in a crew, from the spot boy to the DOP to the director, to come together to make a piece of work will never happen again. And that for me is amazing. That's what cinema. Thanks.
But thank you so much, Tahir.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
I had so much fun. Thanks. I hope you also.
Yes, totally did. You made me think so much. The long pauses before my answers of like what is happiness. Thank you.
But thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure, and always looking forward to your projects, to your film shows.
Thank you.
And especially Kaali Kaali Aankhein too. I feel like would be ended on such an interesting note.
Yeah. And likewise, I look forward to watching your platform grow.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
But guys, this was Tahir Raj Bhasin on the Humans of Cinema podcast, and like, share, subscribe.
This is Tahir Raj Bhasin on the Humans of Cinema podcast. Like, share and subscribe.